The war in Ukraine, the climate crisis, and global sustainability will be front and center this week as hundreds of leaders from around the world descend on New York for the 78th session of the United Nations General Assembly. Part of the week's events is a two-day summit on the UN's Sustainable Development Goals. It got underway this morning with a dire warning from the UN's Secretary General.
Today, only 15% of the targets are on track, and many are going in reverse. Instead of leaving no one behind, we risk leaving the SDGs behind.
The UN Secretary General calling attention to the slow pace of progress on the body's global sustainable development goals, warning a lack of action is hurting the planet's most vulnerable.
People crushed under the grinding wheels of poverty. People starving in a world of plenty. Children denied a seat in a classroom.
He says some progress is being made, but not at the speed or scale required, and is calling on nations to do better, especially on ending hunger, switching to renewable energy, spreading education, and instituting full gender equality.
The SDGs need a global rescue plan.
The 17 goals were adopted by UN member states in 2015 as part of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, which set out a 15-year plan to achieve them. The goals cover the three dimensions of sustainable development: the economy, social development, and the environment. The UN saying sustainable development means meeting today's needs without compromising the chances of future generations meeting theirs. But with just 7 years to go until 2030, the organization says the climate crisis, a weak global economy, wars, and the COVID-19 pandemic have put the goals in jeopardy.
If only 15% of the Sustainable Development Goals are met, that is a failure. We are facing a dire reality: the climate crisis, persisting hunger, growing inequality, and multiple conflicts plaguing our world.
Despite commitments to eradicate poverty and to reduce hunger being at the core of this agenda, alarmingly, 1.2 billion people were still living in multi-dimensional poverty as of 2022.
Ahead of today's summit, tens of thousands of climate protesters gathered on the streets of New York to send a message to UN delegates and U.S. President Joe Biden, who is attending the General Assembly this week.
My country will spare no efforts to reduce the rates of poverty nationwide, including poverty in families, especially those with many children.
With the climate crisis a major focus of these goals, I want to bring in the founding director of the McMaster University Centre for Climate Change, Altaf Arain. Altaf, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me today.
Now, we heard today that the world is far from on track to achieve some of these sustainable development goals, including ones connected to climate change. So how much time do we have to act to avoid some of the most serious consequences of global warming?
Yes, I would say not much. If you look at the recent IPCC and the United Nations meetings, the focus is on the action. So we want to act fast and reduce our greenhouse gas emissions. There are other summits that are focused to achieve goals by 2030, and there are goals by 2050. For example, Canada has committed to go net zero by 2050, but now we are focusing that Canada should achieve 40 to 45% by 2030. So if we act on our commitments, then this will make a huge difference.
What level of emissions reductions should nations like Canada be aspiring to, and how fast?
Yes, when the Paris Agreement happened, and then later on Glasgow conference in the UK, Canada committed to go net zero. So those commitments are there, and those targets are there. So if we are able to achieve those targets, then not only we will honor the international commitments, but we will also make a difference and will provide a leadership role for the world. So for us, the biggest challenge is, are we on the track to achieve that goals? I think we are behind to not achieve these goals, but there are some actions we have to take so that we honor our commitments, at least 45% or 50% reduction by 2030 if we can achieve, or even we can go beyond this. The goal is to set the targets right. So it's not a short-term solutions would not work. We have to plan long-term, and we have to look at the energy, clean energy, how we generate, and how we manage our cities, how we manage our transportation systems, so that not only we achieve the target, but we also become a leader in the global community stage.
Do you think the political and societal will exists in Canada to achieve these goals?
In Canada, if you look at the public opinion and if you look at the society, then we are very much informed, and there is like a commitment from the people, and there is many groups that are working on individually, but I think as a collectively, we have to bring these pieces together. So it's not like 100% government's responsibility, or the businesses can do it, society can do it alone. We have to come together as a society to achieve these goals, because this goal is very large, and then it needs an agreement and the will. So we have done better, but there's a much room to do better.
That's Altaf Arain, the founding director of the McMaster University Centre for Climate Change. Altaf, thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much.